Welcome to the Triple S podcast, where we discuss the scoreboards, the statistics, and the standings. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the ditch that the Yankees are in right now, and the previewing the NFC West division ahead of this new NFL season. We'll go first to the biggest story out of Major League Baseball, and that is the slump that the New York Yankees are in. They're 4-11 in the last 15 games. In that time, they've been bottom 5 in OPS and in hitting average. Matt Carpenter might not return from his broken left foot this season, and he was currently their breakout a couple weeks ago. But now, with that broken left foot, it looks like he won't be back. Giancarlo Stanton is rehabbing in AA from his injury. And I think that those injuries are really the key to that spiral that they've been in, because Matt Carpenter, he's been such a dynamic player. He was leading the league in home runs for a little bit, in hitting average, in on-base percentage, and he really flourished when he moved to the Yankees from St. Louis. And obviously Giancarlo Stanton is such a power hitter alongside with Judge in that lineup. They've been there a couple years, and I think that those two losses are putting a lot of strain on the pitching rotation. In those 15 games when they've been 4-11, they've had a 4.23 ERA, which is much down than their normal ERA, which I believe was in the 2s. It was a very good ERA, and all their statistics were very good before it spiraled, but I think, just one thing leads to another, and this is bound to happen with a lot of teams. It's just you don't expect it with the Yankees because they are so loaded. They seem safe with the lead that they have in the AL East. They're 7 games ahead of the Rays and Blue Jays at last check. And the Orioles and the Red Sox are nowhere to be seen in that division. So they have that lead, but they have to be careful. I think they're a lock for the playoffs, but that doesn't mean that they can keep their foot off the gas pedal. They're going to have to tinker a little bit more with that lineup until they figure something out. And I think they can. But they have to do it soon because they can't keep on this slump. They had a bigger lead in the AL East before, but now it's getting tighter. And the Rays and the Blue Jays, you can't discount them. The Rays, they went to the World Series a couple years ago, and the Blue Jays are a very consistent team, and that's not talked about enough, so I think they have to go figure that out. I don't think it's doomsday for them, but they have to figure it out soon. But moving on from that, we go now to the NFL. The NFL is starting their season in 2 weeks now, and in one of the most competitive divisions last year was the NFC West. It's one of the more wide-open divisions. It has one of the most exciting teams, and it obviously has the defending Super Bowl champions, the Los Angeles Rams. But let's start here with the Arizona Cardinals. They have an exciting new quarterback. Not new, sorry, he's been there a couple years, but he is a young quarterback in Kyler Murray. Last year, they started 11-2 in the season. They were doing amazing, and then they just fell apart to the end. And I think that was due a lot because of the inexperience of Kyler Murray and his lack of game management. And he wasn't really helped by the coaching staff there by Cliff Kingsbury. Because Cliff, he's a very good offensive mind, but he does show that sometimes he isn't ready for the NFL stage in terms of the game management. Not unlike, as we'll discuss later, Brandon Staley, of the Los Angeles Chargers, who gave up a couple games for the Chargers. But going back to the Cardinals, their defense is not talked about enough. They have a really solid foundation there, and I think Cliff Kingsbury is an offensive-minded coach, but their defense is really, really good. They have a lot of spark players, but the inconsistent QB play, I don't think Kyler Murray's ready to be a top 10 quarterback in this league. He definitely shows some flashes of it there, especially in the beginning part of that last season, but they haven't really shown it a lot. Especially near the end of that season, and I think it'll be like that for them this season too. It's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and that might get them by in a lot of other divisions, but as we'll discuss, the NFC West is so competitive and so good. So, I think they're going to actually finish last in that division, simply because they might have a 8-9 season or a 9-8 season, but that might not be good enough because you have the Chargers, you have the Rams, and you have the 49ers, which could all be as good and better. And Kyler Murray, of the quarterbacks in that division, maybe besides Trey Lance with the 49ers, he's the one I trust the least. So we'll have to see. And I don't think in crunch time, I don't think he can deliver. But moving on to the Chargers there, as I mentioned, the Chargers were held back by some bad coaching decisions. They lost 2 overtime games late in the season, which could have pushed them into the playoffs. But especially that last classic game against the Raiders there, the Las Vegas Raiders, and but that doesn't reflect poorly on the team because they were really competitive in almost every game. They have an elite young quarterback in Justin Herbert and a really solid foundation for them to grow. Keenan Allen there at wide receiver. Justin Herbert has a lot of options to go to, and he has a pretty good defense. There's no real weak spots on that team, however, there's nothing that pushes you to make them Super Bowl contenders or anything, because they simply don't have just an elite team. They have a really, really good team all around. I don't think they have any weak spots, as I said, but they don't have an elite team there, so that's why I think they'll finish third in that division. Again, with a really good record, but not good enough to beat the Rams and the 49ers, who I have at 1 and 2 respectively. Going to the 49ers first, they're a real contender. They made it to the championship game in the NFC last year, and we saw the brilliance of Garoppolo and Deebo Samuels and that defense. And they're an extremely deep roster. They're extremely talented. But if they do go with Trey Lance this season, which it is looking like they will, as they're shopping for teams are shopping for Jimmy Garoppolo right now, I'm not ready to trust in Trey Lance. He's too young of a quarterback. He's too inexperienced. And in the flashes that we saw of him last year, he looked inconsistent at best and mediocre at worst. So I think that just won't help him go far. If with any other quarterback, including Jimmy G, I think they could make it to the Super Bowl, as they almost did last year. But with Trey Lance, I don't think they will. And they're definitely not going to win that division, because the other team they have to face is the Rams. The Rams have Cooper Kupp, they have Aaron Donald, and they have Matthew Stafford. They're the clear favorites in that division. They're going to wreck everyone else. Matthew Stafford isn't healthy yet, as I discussed in the last episode, and I don't think they'll be as good as they were last season, but they'll definitely be the favorites in that division, and I think they will win that division. It'll be pretty close between the Rams and the 49ers, I think. Maybe a 1-2 game difference, but when they do go head-to-head, I'm going to trust the Rams more because I simply trust their quarterback more, Matthew Stafford. And we'll discuss more about the NFL and college football here in the next coming days. We'll preview some of the biggest games in Week 1 in both leagues. But that does it for us today at the Triple S Podcast. I hope we get to make another episode here shortly. At least there will be one next weekend. Thank you all for watching and listening. And this has been the Triple S Podcast.